Well, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today here. My name is Lynn Silipigni Connaway, and I am the Director of Library Trends and User Research at OCLC. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about the studies that we've done on discovery and access. And so with this project, our questions were, how do academic library users navigate the path from discovery to access? So what did we want to know? We wanted to know first how individuals discover resources, and then how do they actually access them? So get them in their hands if they're physical, or get them somehow electronically. So that's what we were really interested in. We also were interested in what happens, or what do they do when as we would say, their searches may fail, okay? So what happens then? And what differentiates searches that lead to access and those searches that don't? So what's the difference? And we looked at demographic information. So we had individuals from undergraduate students through faculty. So our goal was to have 15 interviews, semi-structured interviews. We ended up with 14, one less than anticipated. And then we wanted to know, how does access correlate, or does it, with success? So when is an event successful? And we also wanted to look at logs. So we have the WorldCat logs, and we wanted to look at logs, but then match the logs with the individuals and talk to them about their actual behaviors. And that's something that we could not find. That methodology was not used anywhere in the library information science literature or in the computer science literature. So we were testing a new methodology as well. Now, here are some of the summary of results when we looked at the WorldCat discovery logs. So it wasn't just the people who we interviewed, but all of the logs for a period in April of 2018. And so you can see the average number of minutes per session were 5 minutes. Does that surprise anyone? Do you think it would be more or less? Didn't surprise you? I thought it would be less as well. So remember, these are academic users. And then there were an average of 2.2 searches per session. Any surprises there? You thought it would be more searches per session. And then an average of 5.1 words. These are words per search. Any surprises? You thought it was a lot more words? You thought they'd just have one word, or? Okay, 1 or 2 words. Only 12% of the sessions, and we had about 1 million sessions, only 12% had search refinements. So that means that only 12% of them went in and changed the search in any way. And then 33% of the sessions had multiple searches. So they did not just do one search, but they did another search. And that surprised me. And it looks like it surprised you as well. This is the same search, but they refined it. So they may have spelled a word differently, added some kind of a limiter. Yes. So, as I said, we also talked to individuals. So we conducted semi-structured interviews. And the reason we did that is because we can then better identify how the user thinks he or she is behaving. Now, it's a perception. It's their perception. Hence, this idea of matching what they actually did with the logs with what they're telling us they did. Because as we know, perceptions aren't always what they seem to be. These are the 5 institutions that agreed to participate. So what does that mean for participation? That means that we went through their institutional review boards, we got the permission, and then they recruited for us. So we sent them examples of recruitment letters, emails, and they sent them out. And if there were any questions, the individuals contacted us. So now these are some of the demographics of just that month in April. And, I'm sorry, these are the 14 interviewers. You'll see we had more females than males, which is often typical, and you're nodding your heads, whenever we try to get people to participate. Now, we did give them $20 Amazon cards, and that's not a lot. We've been hearing that many of the others who are doing this type of research, now they're saying that it's about $50, but we did not have external funding to write that in, and so we went with the $20 Amazon gift cards. And you'll also see, this is a staff member, it's an academic staff member who we talked to. And you'll see there were 2 faculty, graduates, postgraduate students too, and the majority were undergraduate students. Again, that surprised me. I thought we would have more graduate students, but the undergraduate students were the ones who volunteered to participate. We were trying to get different disciplines, but the majority were in the humanities and professional and applied sciences. We only had a few in social sciences and then the natural formal sciences. Now, we used the critical incident technique. Have any of you ever used that? So when we talk, it's a qualitative technique. And so we ask individuals to think about a memorable time. So sometimes we'll say, think about a time when you needed to find something immediately. What did you do? So first of all, tell us what that incident was, what you had to do, what you did, why you did that. This one, what we asked was about that incident, that search, that discovery session that we had that we took from the system, from the library and from WorldCat Discovery. So what we did is we took those sessions, we matched them with these individuals who said they would participate, and then we had to recreate those searches so that we could develop questions that were specific to them. And then the important thing about this is when we develop and start to code these and develop the code book, we don't come up with themes. The themes emerge from the transcripts, from what the individuals told us. So we're not imposing anything on the data. It's all user-centered. As I said before, we think that this is a unique methodology because we cannot find it in the literature. You'll find a lot of log analysis. You'll find a lot of focus group interviews based on log analysis, but not matching individuals to their actual search logs. And so this was something very different. The idea behind it is you do have to look at the log data. And have any of you worked with log data before? No, it's messy. And a lot of the things that you see in the logs just don't make sense. And so, we spent a lot of time cleaning up these logs, removing any of that information that was not important or was system information, and then trying to just get to what was happening in the search that the individual conducted. And it really, having the qualitative data to couple with that really gives you some deep understanding. And we're hoping that it eliminates some biases, because when we look at logs and we look at patterns in logs, we can come up with some assumptions. We think people were doing this or that. But here we're actually identifying what individuals are doing by their perceptions. These are some example questions from the log interviews. Now, remember, each log session was different. So we tried to get to the same information, but the questions may have been different. So then we asked, please tell us what you were looking for and why you decided to do an online search. Did the item you were searching for come up in your search results? In other words, did you find it? And then I'd like to understand how you felt about your search experience overall. Would you say you were delighted with your search experience? I came up with that terminology because I had presented with Susan Dumais from Microsoft Research, and she said, we always ask people, what delighted you about this? And she said, it's hard to delight people. And so that's what we wanted. We wanted to try that. You know, what delighted you? What do you think delighted people?
Finding the social cells? Finding what they're looking for.
Yeah, just finding anything was a delight. So the bar is pretty low. Yeah, that was a delight. I mean, that was the closest thing to delighted that we came on. These are some of the themes, the high-level themes that came out. So we looked at their decision-making factors. We looked at their search strategies, the formats that they were looking for, the evaluation of the resources, what made them take them or not, if they liked or desired features of the system, their feelings of frustration and delight, influence of a librarian, and that often came up, that librarians do. If a librarian told someone to do something in this way, they often really took to that and would do that all of the time. Now that can be good or bad, because depending on the question. So if you say, oh, use this database for this, every question they have, they will use that database, even though that information may not be in there. But we do have an impact when we teach. And then privacy concerns. Several of them said, how did you get this information about me in this search? Well, they gave it to us. We said, if you're willing to talk to us about this session, we need to look at your logs, the session logs. Do you agree to that? If so, they had to copy that session and then send it to us. So they agreed to it, but yet they wanted to know, well, how did you get this? Can anybody get this? And we had to assure them that no, anyone could not get that. So we believe that the findings from this study could be used and extended to other discovery systems and not just to WorldCat Discovery. So some of the decision-making factors, they wanted convenience, ease of access. And that some of them did not care if it was a physical book in the library or if it was an online. And what surprised me was of the 14 individuals, some of them said they preferred physical items. And that was the biggest surprise to me. Not to you? Why not?
I think a lot of times it's easier for them to use print than it is electronic. They can mark it up if they print it out an article or whatever. But I just think they retain the information a little easier.
From the print. Yeah. They can make notes and well, it surprised me. One of the sessions was 45 seconds, okay? And I looked at this and I said to the person who was working with me, who was the note taker, and we did these via Skype or WebEx, and I said, oh my goodness, we're paying $20 and this was a failed search. And she said, Lynn, we have to do it. We said we would do it. We have to do it. Guess what we found out? It wasn't a failed search. So logs are deceiving. What we found out is the individual found exactly what she wanted, And then she walked away and she was in the library and she walked to the stacks. It was a physical item. So it was not a failed search. But when we looked at it, if I was looking at this for patterns, I would have identified that as a failed search. So that's what's really important about really talking to individuals about what happened. And then they really like that held by feature. So that feature in the discovery system that says who owns it, even if it's not your institution, yes, who owns it, can I get it? Now that brings up some other issues with interlibrary loan, because if they think it's at the library next door, why can't you get it in 5 minutes? But that's a feature that I think we really need to make more accessible and more prominent. That brings more confidence to them. And users are familiar with ILL, and I can't stress this enough. Some love it. They've had wonderful experiences. It just came in, and I downloaded it, and it was wonderful. Others, I think we have a quote that says, well, if you have several months, it's great, So, there are these extremes of, they've had great experiences, and then they've had experiences that weren't so great. They refine their searches in several ways. They use identifiers, so they can say title equals, author equals. They do limiters, so you can limit by the formats. They often add, as I said before, different additional search terms. They do topic refinement, so they'll add, they'll change the wording of their topics. Most individuals use a broad to narrow search strategy. So they start with very broad terms, and then as they progress, they can get more narrow. Now, there is literature out there that indicates this has been going on for a long time, but it indicates that experts are usually the broader searchers. Why? They don't trust retrieval systems, and they don't trust indexers. And so they go very broad because they don't want to miss anything. But with those who don't know the topic as well, they often go more narrow because they don't know what they don't know or are going to miss. And they just want to get it and move on. But we found with ours, they were more broad searches with the logs and then to the narrow. And when we talk to the interviewees, they also search Google and Google Scholar, as well as library databases. So when they're in the discovery system, sometimes they will leave that discovery system. And so we'd ask, so what happened? And they'd say, oh, we went to Google Scholar and we found it. Or we went out to Google to see if we could find something or something else that maybe somebody posted. So we learned that they often do use our databases. They don't always call them databases, but they use them. And titles are the most used identifiers. So they do a lot of copying and pasting. Yes.
Yeah, so they start with the Google and Google Scholar. All these 14 interviews, so how many searches, just the Google and Google Scholar?
No, they use all of these. Yes, and
Did you start them somewhere, like a database?
no, this was what they did, and so when they gave us their session logs, they were in the discovery system. And then when we talked to them and asked questions, that's when they told us, well, we left the discovery system, because I'd say, well, there was a lapse here of like a minute. What did you do? Oh, I went to Google Scholar, and then I came back. Or I left the discovery system, and I went to one of the databases. Or they didn't say databases often. They would say, I went to another library link. Yes?
Did you need that search after they came back, or did you need that search in a different session?
It varies. So if they left and came back, Then they would also often refine their search. Now, they wanted PDFs, and they look for really obvious indicators of availability. They understand what a PDF is. It's portable. They can get it when they want. They download it. They have it. However, I'll be talking about another study that we're doing, looking at 4 o'clock today, and it's looking at fourth graders through graduate students and how they determine credibility with online STEM sources, and it's an IMLS-funded project, and their PDFs were not what they wanted. But with this group, PDFs were what they wanted, and they knew what they knew what a PDF was. And some things they don't know what format that is. There was no clear preference for print versus online, although some had a print preference, others had an online, and some said, I don't care, I just want it. And I want it now. Yeah. Now. It's, yes, it's that convenience. Feelings of frustration, delight. The greatest frustration, having way too many results. They don't want to sort through it. They do not know how to determine what will have the best information for them. And that's a great place for us as librarians to step in. And I think at a very young age, we should be scaffolding our information literacy programs. Interviewees were satisfied, but not necessarily delighted by their experience. At the closest, as I said before, that they got to feeling delighted was that they found anything, something. So what we came up with was that we think this was a great way of learning by combining the logs with the interviews with the individuals who conducted those sessions. It really is good. It clarified the qualitative data because, as I said, when you're doing interviews, it's that perception. But we had not only what they thought they were doing, we had what they actually did. So if they would say something, we could say, oh, but you did this. And they go, oh, that's right. So that really helped to clarify. It also provided the context for the quantitative data. So, as I said, the 45-second the session I thought was a bust, and it wasn't. And this type of methodology is most effective when there are digital traces present. So we need some kind of a log, some kind of a trace to go back and discuss. And I really think that this type of research is what we should be using to inform the development of our literacy, information literacy instruction. And then these are some of the references for some of the things that we've used. I can open it up now if you have any questions or comments or...